The Christian Economist explains. Lesson 5, inflation. Hi, I'm Dave Arnott, the Christian Economist. I've told my freshmen at the university quite often, I pay less for gas when I was a freshman in 1973 than they're paying this year. How can that be? I paid 45 cents a gallon. They're paying about $2.80. Well, obviously, what's the difference? Inflation. And that's our subject today. See, inflation is the change in prices over time. So if you adjust the gas price for inflation, I am paying less. If I paid 45 cents in the fall of 1973, my freshmen today should be paying about $2.60. They're paying $2.80. So they're paying more for the same thing. That's inflation. Definition. Inflation is the decline of purchasing power of a given currency over time. I often use a shorter definition. It's simply increasing prices and wages. This is a U.S. currency. This is a U.S. good. As there are more of these chasing fewer of these, the price goes up. As there are fewer of these chasing more of these, the price goes down. In economics, we talk a lot about supply and demand. As there's an increasing supply of these, each is worth less. That means it takes more dollars to buy this pair of running shoes. That's simple inflation. And it takes these two parts, as we talked about. It is the increasing price of the shoes, and it's the increasing wages that are paid to make and sell the shoes. That's inflation. The Consumer Price Index. This slide shows that we measure inflation based on Consumer Price Index. If you could add up the cost of all the items in this basket of goods, then you could compare that with how much this basket of goods cost in a previous time period. Thus, Consumer Price Index is the way we measure inflation, and it's maintained by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. 3 types of inflation. The slide you're looking at now shows the 3 types. Demand pull shows that this pair of sneakers went up because of the demand pull effect on it. The second item in this slide shows cost push. That means labor has to be paid more. That increases the cost. The third section of the slide shows a built-in cost, and this is prices and wages. See, as prices go up, you have to pay labor more to produce the goods. As the price of labor goes up, you have to pay them more to buy the goods. See, this is why it's a circular relationship, and why my simple definition of inflation is increasing wages and prices, as is shown in this diagram. Inflation and fiscal policy. Now, you'll remember from lesson 3, we talked about the macro model, which you're looking at again. See on the left side of the model where it says inflation? As the economy increases, gross domestic product gets greater, inflation increases because there's more demand for goods. This is how we talk about inflation relative to unemployment on the other side of the macro model, which will come in a later lesson. Now, look at the middle of the diagram. See where it says fiscal on the top? This is the government's contribution to inflation. When the government spends too much money, that causes inflation. Inflation and monetary policy. Continue to look at the macro model, and in the bottom center, you'll see something called monetary policy, which is exercised by the Federal Reserve Bank. They do 2 things: control interest rates and money supply. Our concern today is money supply. As the Fed increases the money supply, each dollar becomes worth less. This is how the Fed, via monetary policy, contributes to inflation. It gets pretty simple. The more dollars there are, the less each one is worth. As they increase the money supply, it causes inflation. Inflation and the poor. We as Christians care about the poor. When you initially look at this, you might think that inflation would hurt the rich more than the poor, but you would misunderstand it. You would think that because the rich have more money, right? And so inflation will hurt them more. But what you're missing is that the rich can stash their money in instruments that avoid inflation, among them gold, real estate, and stocks. Poor can't buy gold, real estate, nor stocks. The poor have to buy milk and bread on a regular daily basis. Look, here's some good advice. Don't put off buying diapers. Bad things happen. So do you see how inflation hurts the poor more than the rich? See, we as Christian economists care about the poor, and that's why we think inflation is a tax on the poor. This has been Lesson 5, Inflation. I'm Dave Arnott, the Christian Economist. Fear God, tell the truth, earn a profit. See you next time.